Okay, part two.
Argument. Now, I've said repeatedly and clearly, and you seem to misplace weightings on what I'm saying. I am making the... So now you're trying to plan a section of an economy. And I'm making the criticism that it will suffer all the failings of what is recognised that a planned economy fails on.
Yeah, and you haven't demonstrated that. That's why I said there was this issue with framing, and I think I should do a little explanation, a quick starter for framing, because people need to understand, if they want to understand me, how I see words and stuff work. Using the word a fixed economy, provide a fixed economy, obviously as a subset of a greater economy, which remains dynamic by assumption, and also I've explicitly said. You can't draw the same conclusions of when the whole economy is fixed. Okay, for one, the prices in this fixed economy, they are dependent on there being a dynamic economy outside, right? I said, so these state pension / Social Security recipients in the U.S., maybe they're getting $800 a month. We'll go back to when $800 a month was a decent standard of living. It'll be a judgment call. We'll get together, constitutional convention style, one way or another. Our representatives, or I like as direct democracy as possible. I'd like to see a public conversation about it. We'll go back and we'll look up the prices. How much was milk when, $9,600 a year was a decent middle-class sustenance wage? How long? What was the price of milk and bread and gasoline? We're going to find out that we're making our retirees live just shitty. There's games you can play with it, like you can say, well, they're supposed to have some other means. I don't really want that. I want the basic thing to be, all that you really need to have a decent, humane environment to live in. Anyway.
And that is the inefficient allocation of resources amongst competing ends. You don't like this common phrase that I said, and you said, because you retort back to me, what about resources or commodities? I forget what you said.
Yeah, I want to make a whole video. What you're talking about is this economy is a way of distributing scant resources. Yeah, well, what about that? Scant resources. Why are we assuming? Because, see, the problem with that is wow, that could be important. I would call that crisis economics. But it's funny that a capitalist system would have that phrase associated with it, because, see, it's in the business of creating false shortages to give them, through marketing, to give an impression of the value and scarcity of a resource. And also by getting leverage points where you can control the resource, with per processor licensing, I'll let you look it up, that was eventually prohibited on the part of Microsoft. They created false scarcities. If you made one decision, then there is no Windows for you. There's still plenty of Windows. They could make the copy, sell it to you, but no. They created a pressure that created false scarcity. And then, lo and behold, the problem with the system that focuses on scarce resources is that if it works at all, it is designed for a crisis situation when there is a scarcity, of food, and somebody's going to go hungry. Okay, but what we really need is an economy of commodities. What really epitomizes the market to me is not trading stocks of a company, it's the trading of futures, the trading of commodities. Okay, those are the super efficient, markets where the price matches the cost plus a reasonable amount of percentage for the expert producing it and things like this. That is the real issue of the economy, is How do we distribute the resources that we do have enough of? Solve that, and then when there's scarce resources, you can have a special case, little tiny economic theory about, making the hard calls of what happens when there's a resource crisis, like a natural disaster. Okay, 5 more minutes.
Dead. But everything, human time, minerals, everything is a resource, and there are competing ends, different people.
But they are not all scarce, right? Some resources are not scarce. Time, while you only have a limited amount of it, comes at a consistent rate no matter what. Now, if you're wasting your time, you do calculations as though you've lost it. Yeah, you've misspent it. It's a resource. It could be misspent. But some resources are plentiful. Socially speaking, even time is very plentiful because we as individuals are limited, but there's just an endless supply of more people with more time. Okay, so it's like oxygen plus. We're producing that shit like crazy, whereas oxygen, there just happens to be such a huge amount that we're not using it up too quickly. I mean, obviously there's forests and jungles producing oxygen, so the same thing actually applies to it as well.
Pen production for these pensioners.
Pens!
You have to decide
Give me
how
my
many,
pens.
what colours. How do you know which is preferable? Yeah, you don't.
I know which is preferable. I'm not saying. See, this is where you're falling for the framing. I've said engineered economies and planned economies and fixed economies. Now, I've made it very clear in my word drawings of these things that the fixed economy is a subset. We already have a fixed income we're giving them. I'm just saying take some of the money back as the distributor of those goods so that you can help guarantee this idea that it's enough to live on. Okay? And then you're acting like I'm planning, and you go into this in a bit more, that I'm planning all of this stuff. That I'm trying to say how many pens should be made. No, they're already made. There's already a demand. There's enough made that my desire is in the noise. I'm not saying other people have to want those pens. Hopefully they won't, because then there'll be a problem. Maybe they'll be hard to get because they didn't manufacture enough because the government gets first take or whatever. I'm not saying I want everybody. I literally use this example because I'd like those pens. I'd also like the record books, which I haven't found where they are, but I really want the record books as well. And I don't care. I'm not trying to sell it to you. I'm saying that this is a market force. I'm exerting my desire. And maybe you have to wait till somebody puts it in a store, but this shit is out there for sale and I can't buy it. Part of the market pressure is for me to say, hey, I want to buy it. You haven't let it compete. And you're acting like, because I say it should be able to compete with commercial pens, you're like, no, it shouldn't. But what you're really saying is, you're trying to control what pens we buy and decide how much is spent on pens. No, I'm not. I'm trying to leverage off the fact that the government needs a shitload of pens. It needs that. If at some point it doesn't need pens anymore, I might be left out in the cold. Okay, there's another one. When I said 5 minutes, I meant left in my video. You have another 6 minutes. This is going to be like 5, probably 4. I'm trying to overestimate.